Okay, and here I am with Tim Reed, a man I've known for a long, long time. We haven't caught up for quite a while. And we just had a chat before the show was starting and some really interesting information. Anyway, Tim, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're doing at the moment with would you call it your business?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a metal sculptor. I'm a dad, married for 28 years, live in Melbourne, Victoria, Australia, and I've got 4 kids, 2 of which got married last year and are living out of home, and twin 20-year-old girls who are still here with us.
Yeah, right. And we were talking about the situation in Victoria at the moment. Now, how did it get there? Because it was like I think there was, if I remember it correctly, there was like a Black Lives Matter protest, and then you guys went back into lockdown. Is that what happened, or?
Yeah, but it wasn't relevant to the Black Lives Matter protest.
Okay.
So we had we went into a stage 3 lockdown, which restricted us a fair amount, and things worked really well. Case numbers were really low, and we came out of that. But Melbourne, Victoria, did what a lot of other states were doing, which was put people into isolation when they were arriving in the country for 2 weeks.
Yeah, lockdown.
A lot of it, really doing nothing. And most of the other states used the Australian Defence Force, who had offered to manage that for security at the hotels in quarantine. Victoria chose not to do that and used private contractors. Basically made a massive debacle of it. And there was a Black Lives Matter rally in town, and the Victorian Premier, he didn't endorse it, but he almost gave permission to go to it, which is ridiculous. Not because of the cause, but because of what was happening with COVID. Anyway, that didn't have too much of an effect, but in a very short amount of time, all of these cases arose out of doing a bad job with hotel quarantine, people being out and about who were supposed to be locked up, private security guards with no training, there was even sleeping with either each other or one of the people that was supposed to be locked down or whatever. But basically, the cases exploded in Victoria, and everything got really serious, and that's how we ended up back in stage 4. And the inquiry into the lockdown, not lockdown, the isolation for 2 weeks, has shown that 99% of cases in Victoria came from travellers coming into lockdown, quarantine, that weren't managed well.
Wow. So a little bit of ineptitude, a little bit of...
Unbelievable.
I think I've seen on Facebook or other things like that, social media, that case of them sleeping together and all that, and I was like, what was going on?
Yeah.
But I didn't
Crazy. Hey, like security guards were actually being employed using WhatsApp with a job description.
Oh dear. But I didn't know that other states had used the military. That was very interesting.
Yeah, there was only one other state. I think it was actually Western Australia that didn't use the military. but
Yeah.
everyone else did other than Victoria and Western Australia.
Yeah, now that's really interesting because briefly when we were talking before the show, so you were telling me that police are what are they driving around, and if you're in a car, they're like, "Where are you going? What are you doing?"
Well, they implemented this curfew of 8 o'clock at night till 5 o'clock in the morning. No one's allowed out, which is a relatively extreme measure. Now, it's easy to look at it and say, well, no one should be going anywhere anyway. All of that is true. But there's been a big controversy this week because someone in an interview, our Premier is saying that he's following the health advice. All of this stuff that he's saying, I'm just following the health advice. Well, someone said something to the Chief Health Officer in Victoria about the curfew,
Yeah.
and he said, oh, no, I didn't have anything to do with that. And then the Chief Commissioner of Police in Victoria was being interviewed on radio, and they said, okay, so because it was a police matter, obviously. He said, no, I was only told about that a few hours before it happened, before it was announced.
Right.
And
So
now the Premier...
yeah, who's instigating lockdowns, curfews?
The Premier is saying that decisions are made by a whole lot of people and all these discussions happen, and he can't specifically remember who it was that said that we should have a curfew.
What the? What?
It is unbelievable. Unbelievable.
That is insane. So
Yeah.
all of Victoria is in a curfew situation, and 8 o'clock at night you can get arrested, right? You can get arrested if you're out at 8 o'clock at night.
Oh, if you are out on the road after 8 o'clock, there's a very high chance that you will get pulled up. Like you'd be a clown to be out on the road at that time.
Man, it's very, very different to the Victoria I grew up in. That's for sure.
Yeah,
but
just a bit.
I'm just flabbergasted. I just can't believe that no one knows who's responsible for the curfew. It's like, it could have been that guy. It could have been. I don't remember. What the fuck? You're talking about people's lives.
Because there's been, I know, and because so many people are affected by it really negatively. It's still on this particular stage. But the Premier has been very much wheeling out this, I'm following the health advice. So to hear all of a sudden, to hear the Chief Health Officer say that he had nothing to do with it, and then the Chief Commissioner. But then the Premier's response to it also, at one stage he said, well, no one should be out anywhere, so what does it matter?
Yeah, right. No one should.
It shouldn't be out on the road.
What?
But that doesn't change the fact that it's like, and that is the one thing in all of the different stuff that's happened through this time. There's been lots of mistakes. It's a big deal. Everyone's learning on the run. Everyone's trying to do their best. But that particular thing is one of the things that you relate most to a police state, having a curfew.
Yeah, definitely. And I just still in my brain, right, because so my story was that I was in Thailand. I had been in Thailand on holidays when COVID happened, and they said, stay in Thailand, and we did online courses, right? So I did online courses from Thailand. Yeah. And then they said, right, if you're coming back, you better come back now, right? So, and I was umming and ahhing. I was like, maybe I'll go, maybe I won't go. And I thought, well, I should go. So I went back, and then when I got back here, there was a curfew. There was a curfew here. I think it was midnight. I came home one night from being out drinking, and the front of the building was chained closed, and
Wow. Well, we heard all these rumours about people doors being welded shut in China.
yeah, that did happen. That happened in
Yeah.
Wuhan, as far as I know, which is another story entirely as well. But yeah, as far as curfew goes, but that only happened for maybe a week, and the
Well,
lockdown
we've
was sort
been
of
in this for 5 weeks. And the other thing that's been a big deal, like the curfew, has been this 5 kilometre radius limit from home.
yeah,
So where I
okay.
live, for instance, where I live, we're not even 5 kilometres to any shop or store where I actually live in Melbourne. But they're using the number plate recognition system that they use
Yeah.
for registrations and stuff to see where people live, to see how far they are from home, and then they can question them on it.
Well, man, I tell you, that is sounding a lot like it's getting very close to a police state. Now, a thing that I saw on Facebook today, while we're talking about this, because I was looking at some stuff on Facebook about Victoria, and I saw this. It was like a generator. What we would, in mining, when I was working in mining, we had like generators for lighting plants, but instead of having lights at the top, it had cameras, and it was mobile. They'd obviously parked it there, and they'd put it in a car park, and it had cameras on it.
Right.
And I was like, "What is going on in Australia? That's insane!" Like,
I haven't seen that one.
yeah, it was like a tower off a trailer, and at the top of the tower were 2 cameras on it,
Wow.
and it had mobile surveillance. I think it said mobile surveillance device or mobile surveillance unit, something
Wow.
like that. And I was like, "What the hell is going on?" I mean, that is okay. I live in a place where that's a given. In the hallway
Yeah.
outside my
yeah.
door,
It's not Australia.
there are 4 cameras. When I walk down my hallway, I get
Yeah.
monitored by
Yeah.
4 cameras walking down the hallway to my room.
Wow.
Right? So there are cameras. There are cameras everywhere. And I mean, it's
Yeah.
really handy if you lose something, because they know where you've been.
Yeah.
And you can find it.
Yeah.
But it's still a little bit intimidating. You kind of have to get your head around it while living in China. But Victoria, man, we're talking about the place where we grew up, and before speed cameras, thank God.
Yeah. Thank God.
Oh
Yeah.
man,
Crazy driving in those days.
yeah, well, it's great. I mean, I loved it. I loved having a motorcycle back then. Now that's the thing that we were talking about. You said that you still have a motorcycle.
Yeah, I still ride, and especially because of where I live. So I've got about 10 k's of twisty, like country road, asphalt. Twisty,
Nice.
it goes up, follows a ridge up to a point, then turns off and follows another ridge across towards Warrandyte. And it's
Beautiful.
just up and down and tight and twisty. And
Nice.
so if I'm going anywhere with where I don't need the ute, then I'm on the bike, except for the middle of winter, of course.
Yeah, right. For all my friends who are not Australian, a ute is a pickup. That's pretty much what the world calls them.
Yeah,
We call them utes. They call them pickups. But
Yeah.
so what
Yeah.
what bike do you have for these beautiful twisty roads?
An FZ600R, yummy.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah. I had an
About 3 years
R1.
old.
I had an R1 for a
I
while.
saw the pictures of your R1 on Facebook when you're in Thailand.
Yeah. Beautiful bike. That bike actually taught me
Uh,
about riding, even when I was old when I got it.
Okay.
But yeah, I could it was so sensitive that you could feel the slightest dip between the front and the rear, and you could just feel the lean,
Wow.
and everything on it was just so beautiful. But I imagine your 600R, that should be very similar, I would imagine.
Yeah, well, that runs the same engine as the R6, but detuned significantly.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah,
And a bit more upright, a bit more in my dirt bike riding style rather than the full super sport.
yeah, I understand that. I in Thailand, I had have a naked 300cc, a Yamaha, the
Oh, that'd be
MT-03.
great.
It is so much fun. It is so much fun because I can wring its neck.
Yeah.
It's a twin, so it's
Yeah.
still pokey. It's got the
Yeah.
technology of the later bikes, and it's just I can wring its neck and I can lean it right over and I can have an absolute ball on that bike. And there are lots of nice twisty roads.
Yeah, well, I certainly find that whether it's dirt bikes or road bikes, I feel like I ride quicker on a smaller CC bike. So I'm sure that I can ride this 600. They do the same bike in 1,000.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But
Definitely. Very big.
I reckon that the 600, the rev range, the lightness of it compared to 1,000, I reckon I'd hurt myself on the 1,000.
Yeah, it's a funny thing because, like you say, right, I feel like doing, 140. I'll probably be happy to do 140 on the 300, or 120
Yeah.
in places where I may not consider doing that on the 1,000. It's a weird thing.
Yeah.
You with the lower CC, you feel probably more confident. I mean, definitely more confident in the stopping power because it's lighter. But also, you feel more confident. You throw it around a bit more because it's lighter.
You throw them around a lot more, I reckon.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's fun. I've also got a VMAX in Thailand that I picked up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that's
Those styles getting really popular over here now.
yeah, right. The sort of like drag tourer almost, I guess you call
Adventure
it.
bike. Hmm.
Right. Yeah. No, I have an adventure bike as
Oh,
well.
sorry. You're talking about the VMAX. Bloody hell, those things are amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, that bike
So
is
is that like a
something else.
1,200 or 1,400?
Yeah, it's a 1,200cc, but it's got a boost system in it as well. So when you hit 6,000 RPM, and so it's got so because it's a V, all the carbs are in the center, and basically the left hand side and the right hand side. What happens is when you hit 6,000, it puts two carbs over the piston as the pistons go around and fire. So it doubles your carbs.
Those things are grouse, those VMAXs. Even those early ones were really good. Really good.
Yeah, it's an early one. It's not a late. Like I think they stopped making them now. Oh god, everyone's going to go off at me. Watch the comment section light up. I think they stopped making them. I'm just going to go with 92, maybe 92, 91, something like that.
Oh no, they brought one out not that long ago, I don't reckon.
Oh, they're still making them, but the ones that they make now are 1,700 cc's, and they're 200 horsepower.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
and they don't have V boost.
Okay, so you're back in. Is it the Katani sort of the Katani sort of era?
Yeah,
the Suzuki Katani.
Yeah, Katana. Yeah, there's probably that. Yeah, that era. Yeah, definitely. Probably around then. Yeah, they were. I mean, 87, 88, somewhere around there. I think they kicked off. I remember reading about it, going, "This thing just sounds insane." Oh, did you lose hearing? Have you lost hearing, or can you still hear me?
No, I've lost my earpods, but I can still hear you. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah, no problem. Everything's good.
Good. I'll move a bit closer.
Yeah. I remember reading about them, I think in 87 or somewhere around there, and thinking I have got to get one of those, And I got one, I think in maybe 2011, somewhere around there. And then, in Thailand, one came up for sale, and I was like, yep,
Wow.
right, I'm getting it. And you know what? It ended up, it was a piece of shit. And I had to get a new motor for it. It was so bad. But the new motor I got for it is unreal. Like, it's heaps of power. That thing's... They come out with 145 horsepower with V-Boost when they have a V-Boost motor in them. And, yeah, you know it when you ride it. Hang on, and, yeah, feel the fear.
Handling wouldn't be great, though, would it?
No, the handling's terrible.
Especially in tight traffic.
Yeah, they're a straight line drag bike. They were made for the American drag, like drag between street lights kind of setup. Yeah, but you know,
Grouse.
Yeah, plenty of power.
They all have their purpose. All of these bikes.
Yeah, they all have a purpose. That's for sure. The R1 is the R1 used to do about 156, I think, in first gear, and it got there super quick. Yeah, that was insane. That was an insane bike. Yeah, so you're living in the mountains, and now let's get back to that, and let's get to what you're doing for work, and that is sculpture, right? And it like reclaimed metal, but also when I look at your sculptural work, it does tend to have a very bush feel about it. It's not urban. I don't feel like your sculpture is not urban. So can you tell us a bit about that, and maybe even tell us how you got into it, how you got into being a sculptor and doing sculptures?
Yeah. Well, I was building for a long time. Had a building company with Rick Vernon, who you'd remember.
Yeah, right. Wow.
Wendy's little brother.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Had a business together and he's still got it now for 12 years. And that was great. And at the end of that sort of time is when I got really crook. But then I was earth moving for a while, and I bought a welder to repair the bucket on my loader.
Yeah, right.
That I used for work, and really piqued my interest. I never even fixed the bucket, to be honest. But I started playing around, and I lived in Heathmont back then.
Yeah.
And then when we moved out to the Bend, I had space around me so I could collect material, and I can make a lot of noise, which I do make a lot of noise in my work. So and I started making bits and pieces, and we got to a point where Karen and I said, well, we like it, maybe other people might too. Got enough space to get a website up and going, and then over the next couple of years, while I wound the artwork up, we slowed the earth moving down, and a couple of years ago closed the earth moving side of the business, probably more than that now. And I'm lucky, very lucky to be working full time in artwork.
Yeah, that is a very people say lucky. I often think it's like I have some friends that are very successful, and artistically successful people. But really, if you were to talk to them, they would say, "Yeah, I'm a 10-year overnight success." It's like, I think after 10 years, it seems to be that if you're doing something for 10 years, people start to take notice of you and what you're doing.
Yeah, well, it's not even that really. That's a part of it. But what's a bigger part of it is the amount of effort that you put into it. Like, whilst people will say, "Oh, you're really lucky to be doing what you want for a job," and I totally agree with that. But I've worked my ass off, and still do now, to make a living as an artist. You've got to be putting out a lot of work, a lot of variety, a lot of different price points.
Yeah.
And yes, you're doing something you love for a job, but you're working very, very hard to do it.
And I imagine that it like, you know, a piece of artwork doesn't just happen. You know, it's like looking at, like when you're talking about welding and all that. And also you've got to have the idea. You know, you've got to, like, I think artists have a vision, you know, that they see the thing before it's made, or they see a version of it before it's made, and then they go about and create that. And, you know, like you say, to be the amount of time that it takes for how much output you need to have to be able to sustain yourself with having product to sell, you know, has got to be, you know, it doesn't sound like, a lot of people think, oh yeah, they just fart around, they sell something and it costs a heap, and then they just keep, you know, they sit back and fart around and do whatever, and then they come up with another one. And yeah, it doesn't work like that at all. And I don't think I've ever met an artist that has ever said to me, yeah, you know, I do whatever I want, and then, you know, sometimes I do my art, and, you know, that kind of thing. I think, yeah. So, where do you? So sorry. Before I was saying that your artwork seems very rural, or about nature. Really, a lot of it. Where do you get your inspiration from? Where you live?
Yeah, I get it from a lot of different places. Certainly from where I live, and even if it's not, if you couldn't necessarily relate the art to where I live, it ultimately has to do with where I live, because where I live makes me who I am, and puts me in a space to be able to create it. So, but one of the biggest things working with reclaimed steel is the pieces that you get, the stories behind them. They have a massive amount to do with the work that comes out. Like picking up a load of material and spending time with someone who knows where that's all come from, it keeps me awake at night. Like I come home with a truck and trailer full of stuff, it keeps me awake at night.
Yeah, I remember about 10, maybe 20 years ago, probably the last 20 years, I would think, there was a really big kick towards people wanting to buy art that had a story with it, you know. So, you know, it was highly marketable to be able to say, I made this from this, but let me tell you about the thing I made it from. And people really got engaged with that story. Do you think there's...
That's basically how I sell work. And it's not selling work by spinning some bullshit. It's about the story that comes with the material. A good example, I reckon, is I've made this piece over the years with a big sprocket that comes from driving the track chain on an excavator. Mm-hmm. So this bit of steel, this big, heavy bit of steel, is in underneath this machine. And it's rolling around, dragging this giant chain, and this giant chain's got all of these slats over it that are digging into the earth and pushing it to do its job. And they just get absolutely worn out, and no one even sees them.
Yeah.
And then someone takes the piece of steel and pulls it off the excavator and throws it to the side and says, it's done, its life's over. And I get to take that big sprocket that is full of life and go, not only is its life not over, but it's going to be the star of the show. You know, it's beautiful.
Yeah, is it a redemption or a resurrection story? It does sound like that, you know. Here's this thing that's just been sitting there, people are like thrown away, left to rust, and now, like you say, it's the star of the show, becomes star of the show. Unreal. I can see how excited you get about it.
Yeah, well, I do, and one of my favourite things by far is that I get to connect with other people's stories. I had a farmer down at Christmas Hills down the road from here rang me and said, my wife follows you on Facebook. We're moving out of our farm and there's a heap of steel around here that she thinks you'd be interested in.
Yeah, right.
So I rocked down there and there's all this incredible steel with all this history that the farmer can tell me about. You know, I just quiz him over and over about where everything's from and what it's done. But as we walked around, there were pieces that I really liked, and he'd say, oh, no, you can't have that because that comes from my wife's dad's farm, and she wouldn't want to let that go. And then we'd be in another corner of the farm miles away, and he'd go, oh, no, you can't have that because that comes from my wife's dad's farm, and she wouldn't let that go. And I said to him, how about, we hadn't talked about money for stuff. Said, how about, as we go around, let's gather the stuff that is from your wife's dad's farm.
Yeah.
And then I'll take that stuff and make a sculpture for your wife with the material that she's had spread all over the property from her dad's farm. Of course, which she was all up for. But then I get to build this sculpture out of this incredible material that her family history is built into, with brass and copper and old steel that's been sitting in a paddock or that's been on the rim of a cart that has been carting stuff around and earning them a living, and then make it into something that their new house has a spot in the centre of a circular driveway, and each time they get home, she gets to connect with her history and her father, even though they're in a completely different property in a different part of Victoria.
Yeah, that's...
I love that I get to do that stuff.
Yeah, that's great stuff to do. It sounds amazing. It sounds really, really cool. I love steel too, and I'm a big fan of. I don't know if you went in the other podcast when I was talking to Desiree. I was talking about Rodin. I love Rodin, and I got right into Rodin because I was fascinated by how he made his sculptures by pouring steel. And the reason that I was fascinated by it was because I used to work in a foundry. I used to be a furnaceman, and so I used to melt steel for a living for a couple of years. And, I used to work the furnaces and patch out the furnaces and do all that and pour the steel and pour jobs and stuff. And I was really, really fascinated. Like, I saw these big, obviously there had to be molds and things involved, and I was absolutely fascinated by it. And, some of it is carved in wax, and they press the sand around the wax, and then when they pour the steel in, that makes the mold. But also, like when you're talking about those big parts for machinery, I used to work in a place that made those, and I used to see the molds that were made, and they'd make them out of wood and then press them into the.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely fascinating stuff. I'm still fascinated by it.
Yeah, I was actually in Western Australia, and I went to a. You there?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was in Western Australia with Karen for 10 days earlier it was last year. And I went to a rusty stuff place that I knew was there because of Facebook. And he had these timber wheels, which were the moulds that they made trains, big diesel trains out of. They'd take these wooden moulds and cast the sand to make those wheels. Amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a definitely. I mean, there's something artistic about that, about pouring steel and making things from it. Even before it gets
Yeah,
to
it's
you,
all creation, isn't it?
yeah, I mean, before it gets to you and it's rusty and it's kind of been through an artistic process in the beginning as well. So it's kind of like you're completing
Yeah.
the cycle, like some kind of finishing the life cycle of the steel that it starts off being artistically
Yeah,
made.
but
And
then what about the next stage, Keith? What's the next stage?
the next stage
Like,
is it goes
what-
into the ground.
Yeah, or maybe, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I think you're right. I think the next stage it probably dies.
Yeah, well,
Some great grandchild says, "I don't know what this shit that Grandpa made is.
yeah.
I'm ditching it."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Why did he make this? Well, that's a load of crap. Like, why would I be interested in that? And then he turns like 40 or 50. He goes, "Fuck! I wish I had that shit that Grandpa made." You know? Yeah.
I wish I'd kept that.
Yeah, I feel like such an idiot. Yeah, that's funny. I mean, that's a funny thing too with age, how perceptions and understanding of the world changes, isn't it? That's a really big thing. That I think I've noticed. Obviously, I think probably everyone notices as they get older, but the things that were valuable when you were younger, which is pretty much like impressing chicks. Those were the valuable things, and then later, like then you get a chick, and then now what? No, I got to impress the neighbours, or whatever. I've got the big TV, or whatever, and you kind of feel like you go around trying to impress people, but you get to a certain age and you're like done impressing people, and you start to see things that you like. You're like, I like that. For me, it's motorcycles. And the new thing for me is doing this podcast. I'm just absolutely loving doing it. It's like a new lease of life for me.
Good.
Yeah, I totally, and I love hearing the stories. So many fascinating stories, so many fascinating people out there, and I've really concentrated on I don't really want to have people who are like particularly famous, because I'm interested in. I think everyone's got some pretty interesting stuff to talk about, and I really like to hear about it. So anyway, getting back, like, it's a bit,
Speaking of which, I need to take a leak.
Yeah.
So I hope you can edit this out.
Yeah, I probably
It'll
can.
be off
I
the
probably
back.
can.
Okay.
I'll cut it. I'll cut it here, and we'll come back. Yeah, that's right. Go. No problem. Yeah, no problem. And we're back.
Okay.
Okay, so we're back, and yeah, it was funny. I was just watching Joe Rogan today. So he's moved to Texas, and so he's doing his new podcast from Texas, and I saw that in his podcast they stopped twice to go for a pee in that one, and he was like, "This is the first podcast I've had where I've stopped twice to go for a pee." So I kind of feel like
it's getting old.
Yeah, it must be. Is that he was saying something about he reckoned his bladder had changed because he hadn't been drinking or something for a long time. Yeah. But yeah, fascinating, and yeah, I like his show. Anyway, let's get back to it. So, so you're saying that when you were welding, right? You're welding the bucket. So what was the process from there? Like what attracted you to welding and making sculpture? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah, it's a good question, because I don't, to a certain extent, really know the answer myself. I decided, for whatever reason, to make a couple of little things when I had this welder. I made a couple of spiders, and out of old car springs, and I made a dragonfly with my son. And they were very basic. I've still got the dragonfly, actually. I should
Yeah, right.
should show people it. But it was relatively big, but it was very, very basic.
Yeah, very basic.
And I think I don't know. It's an interesting thing to look at that and feel like I reckon I did a pretty good job of that at the time.
Yeah, right.
And then look at it now and think what a terrible job I did of it. Yeah, and at some stage, I guess it must have clicked a bit for me. And then my artwork in the beginning was extremely simple. And people obviously still liked it. And then it's really grown with my skills. So on one hand, the artwork or the desire to be able to do stuff that's in my head has pushed me to learn how to do it.
Yeah.
And then learning those skills has given me the ability to do something else. And there was a point, at some point, I looked at the artwork that I've been producing, and I've still produced now a fair bit of the original early artwork that I did, to a certain extent, versions of it. And I realised that there was still really like value and a particular style in that early artwork.
Okay, can you just say that again?
Still,
it broke up a bit there.
sure. I realised as the work got more complex that the early work that was a lot simpler still had real value in the world. And I still produce some of that really simple stuff now. And it's some of my favourite.
Yeah. I think I can see that. I think with artists, they have that affinity with their early work because it reminds them. And I'm sure that with most artists, when you start off, it's kind of when the fire's burning bright.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, good to go back to and remember.
Yeah, well, I've got the first sculpture I made with my son. I do some a lot of flowers and some really big flowers these days, but my mum has the first flower that I made, which was a concrete cutting saw blade cut with a plasma cutter in 4 quarters. And those quarters were pushed in, and that was a flower.
Yeah. I can see that.
And still got the first bollard that I ever cut. I was working as a earth mover I did a lot of work with an electrical company.
Okay, yeah.
And I would do all the trenching around the outsides of tennis courts and then horizontal boring underneath the tennis court to the centre.
Yeah.
For their conduits to go through. And part of our work was to pull the old octagonal galvanised, really tall tennis poles, light poles down.
Yeah, right.
And cut them up and throw them into a bin.
Oh, geez.
And they were old galvanised poles. And at some stage I thought, I'm sick of chucking these things out. I'm going to take a couple home. And I brought them home on my truck. I bought a plasma cutter, which I didn't really know what it did and how to use it, learned how to use it.
Yeah.
And cut this detail of this plant into this old galvanised section of light pole.
Yeah.
Put a cap on it, round the cap off. And that I've still got that piece and a few of those early galvanised ones, but I produce that sort of work all the time. It's a bread and butter of one of the things that I do, but now I do it with basically a big commercial light pole company in Melbourne
Yeah, okay.
that have the raw product. The raw product comes in from China, and they've got these massive long lengths of steel light pole. And the first thing they do when they get an order for a sports ground or public car park lighting or whatever
Yeah.
is cut that length of steel to the right length. And my material, I get the offcut of that,
Nice.
and that forms, and then I do lots of different things for those pieces. But one of them is to still plasma cut flora and fauna into them, cut them, grind them, and sell them. And, you know, they can have a light put inside them,
Yeah, yeah,
all that
yeah.
sort of stuff.
Yeah, I worked, when I was working in Western Australia, I worked for a while with a guy. I've done a few things. I worked with a guy who was a limestone, he was a stonemason, and he'd worked on Westminster Abbey.
Yep.
And, he knew stone. Like, he was really, really good. But he taught me a few things with that, and I was always interested in combining limestone. So we used to make quite a few artistic installations, and sometimes we used to make like ruins, like a fake kind of ruins, which would be sort of like a ruined corner, and it would just sort of, we'd put that in a corner, like maybe near a swimming pool or something like that, and it was just like sort of make like a limestone ruins. And I was always fascinated by the idea of what it would be like to put LED light into those ruins. And then I sort of progressed with that, and I thought, what about a column with a LED light piece as a sculpted piece of limestone with a LED light artwork in it, and place it at the right place where the sun did things in a yard, you know, that you could do in a yard. And I was always fascinated by that. I never got around to doing it. Life took me in a different direction later, but it's still a thing that it still sits in my mind that I think that would be something really beautiful to do that. And we can use that as a bit of a lead in too. You're using glass now as well, right? So you are collaborating with another artist to add a glass element to your work as well. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so Rob Haley is a glass artist in St Andrews, about 15 minutes from here, 20 minutes from here. And I met him through an open studio program for the area, and asked him if he could make me a couple of glass bird bars that I could then incorporate into my steel sculpture, which he did. And when I was in his studio, he said, do you reckon you could do something with this? And he handed me a piece of slump glass that he'd done very specific painting using this glass paint that was then fired into the glass. And it was a really interesting shape, and it was almost like dot work, a certain indigenous sort of style, and said, do you reckon you can do something with it? I don't know what to do. And said, yeah, sure. So I brought it back to the studio, incorporated it into a glass screen, which I made using an old wrought iron gate that I'd picked up from somewhere, and added a heap of, when people do big industrial sort of sections of steel, the bolt holes are punched out with a punch rather than drilled.
Yeah, right, okay.
And a byproduct of that is all these punched bits of steel. And I incorporated these punched sections of steel in the same shape that he'd used his glass dot painting on this glass into this screen. Anyway.
Yeah, right.
Finished, sold it straight away, and could have sold it.
Yeah.
And thought, well, maybe there's something to this. we should do a bit more of it. And we've been working together ever since, and I love it. I love the fact that I'm able to do stuff I couldn't do by myself. But we've got a really interesting working relationship where Rob does his artwork, whatever he wants to do.
Yeah, okay.
Brings it to me and says, here it is. This is what I've done. Do whatever you want to do with it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's very liberating.
I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great working relationship, isn't it? Where you can do your thing, he does his thing. You're both being free and can just create something together, doing what you want to do rather than it's got, you start off with it's got to be a tree or it's got to be a kangaroo or it's got to be something, and he comes up with something, then you come up with something to go with it. That's great. I think, it's a really good system, I think. I've never heard of a system like that, but I haven't heard of a lot of systems either, so it's not like it's not like I'm a big, art aficionado and knows exactly what's going on, what should be done, But it does sound really like a really effective. Sounds really effective. It sounds like
I don't know.
Yeah.
Tremendous.
Let me ask you a bit about that. So, or during the course of doing sculpture, have you done like kind of courses? Have you done courses at like art courses or anything like that? Or have you researched any sort of artists or any sort of anything for inspiration?
I certainly keep my eye out what's going on, like all of us on Instagram and that sort of thing. But I find that probably the question I get asked the most. So we're on 5 acres of native bush, protected bush here on the banks of the Yarra.
Yeah, beautiful.
Where I live. And my studio workshop is on site here.
Yeah.
And I've got a gallery space here.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But the first weekend of every month, we're open to the public, and they come out and there's a sculpture trail that winds its way through the native bush all around the property and then back along the river. There's sculpture installed all along the way.
Yeah. I remember reading something about it. Do you call it like a nature trail or something like that?
Yeah, sculpture trail.
Yeah. I remember you put up some things on Facebook that were about new installations on that trail, on your sculpture trail. Yeah, it's a great idea. So
then the public come out between 80 and 150 people on those weekends each month. And that's where most of our selling is done.
Yeah, okay.
But I get asked all the time, where do I get inspiration from? And all I know is that there is a shitload more in my head that stops me sleeping and functioning as a normal human being a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Because desperate to
get it out.
Get it out. And so often that is inspired by the material and the people and the stories.
Yeah.
So sorry, your question about doing a course is no, I learn by succeeding or failing.
Yeah.
I've learned the way different metals work. Because it's reclaimed, it's lots of different sorts of metal. What can be welded, what can't be welded, what breaks, how far you can cantilever something before it falls over and kills someone. It's all just learning through
trial and error.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a good way to go. It's a good way to go. With your saying, you've got all those things in your head. Do you think, or do you rather, do you jot them down, or do you draw little pictures of the things that one day I'm going to do this, or or do you just keep them in your head?
No, they would never stay in my head for long enough, Keith. I'd never get them back. I've got a rotating list of between 30 and 50 pieces that I'd like to produce. And some of them are based on, or a lot of them are based on material that I've collected.
Yeah, okay.
Some of them are based on just random ideas, and I probably get at least 50% of them into production. But interestingly, and listening to Desiree on your podcast last week, there's this thing as an artist that, because I don't really know anything about art, and I've just been working on the hub.
Yeah.
You get a certain amount, or I get a certain amount into producing something that's in my head. And then I feel really discouraged. It's not looking the way I thought it would look. It's not working the way I thought it would work. This is shit. And I've learned that this is a thing that so many artists come up against. And I've learned that if I push through that and if I just keep going with it, often I'm really pleased with the end result.
Yeah.
And I never would have thought I'd get it.
Yeah.
And I think that some of that is that the piece that I'm producing doesn't look like it did in my head or my imagination in reality as I've been producing it. So I've had to persist and allow it to flow and create it in the way the materials work to get to an end result that I'm really happy with. But I thought this was a Tim thing. But the more I talk to other artists, the more I understand that it's very much an art thing.
Yeah. It's actually really, really interesting because it sounds like the idea that you get in your head, somehow you get attached to that, and this is like you have your vision, and you're kind of locked into it. You don't allow yourself the space for that to evolve and become, like, as you say, often when you finish, you're like, wow, it's so much better than what I thought. But like maybe the idea is just the seed and it grows from the idea rather than just, I know myself the same. I have the same things with things that I think about, even when I do plays at school and stuff like that, they take on a life of their own as they go along, and you kind of have to let them. But I think it's a kind of an important.
Well, along with our own life.
What's that?
Along with our own life, like.
Absolutely.
I think we have an idea of who we're gonna be, what we're gonna do. That is, I don't know about you, but very, very different to what I planned.
Yeah, I remember at 30 thinking, this ain't what I thought where I was gonna be at 30, and then at 40, I was like, I think I'm still at 30, and it still ain't where I thought I was gonna be at 30 or 40, and then I think after 40, I was like, fuck it, I'm just gonna roll with it. Where I go is where I go, and what happens. Stop having these ideas of where I should be, or should is one of those words. I have this discussion with people very frequently, but whenever we say should, it's someone else's idea. if you say I want to, that's your idea. But if you say I should, it's usually someone else has told you you should, you know, and it's like
there's an expectation.
I hate that word, man. I hate should. Like when someone says, "Oh, I should," I'm like, "Well, do you want to or don't you?" Like, forget should, forget who's telling you, whatever. What do you want to do, you know? And if you want to do it, do it. But if you don't, then don't. But don't go on with, "Oh, I should." You know, it kind of like feels like a bit of a cop-out, the should thing. But also it's a thing, and it's so...
Well,
it's so much of a common expression and a common word that we use, and yet it's got, like, should, to me anyway, I've got a bit of a thing about it, but it does seem to have, like, a lot of power, and I don't think it should have that much power. I don't think. I'm saying that it should. So if you take it and you say I shouldn't, you know, whatever. But yeah, I really don't think that that's a good thing for people. Where, you know, and I hear people say it all the time. Oh, I should lose weight, or I should. It's like, well, do you want to? Yeah, like own it, take it, and go with it, and good for you. You know, I want to lose weight. Great, do it. You know, but I should just feels like it's got someone else attached to it somewhere. And but I catch myself saying I should, and when I do, I always try and think, why should I? Why should I? And do I want to? And if I want to, I just say, yep, I want to. Yeah. But yeah, anyway, rant over. Let's get back to the art. The art's far more interesting. So how many years have you been doing it now, Tim?
Professionally, I'd say about 6 or 7, something like that.
Yeah, okay. Now, in 7 years of doing it, and you say you have like busloads of people come and do your trail, and you know, and that's a really big thing for you for selling and that. Do you get school kids to come up and go through your trail? Like, I mean, obviously at the moment, impossible. Like, God damn it, you know, Victoria and lockdown and curfews and God, jeez. But do you have school groups?
We have a bit of that. I had this teacher contact me last year from Singapore, and he was an art teacher in Singapore.
Wow, that's fascinating.
And he had some family in Melbourne, I think, but he contacted me and said, look, I'm going to bring a group of art students over to Melbourne, to Australia. We'd really like to come out and spend time at your place.
Wow.
And he said, I've been following you for a while. So we often you think these things will fade out. But this guy persisted, and down the track, I'd said to them, because we're in the middle of Melbourne summer and we're on the Yarra River with a rope swing and all that sort of stuff.
Great.
I'd said, well, if you're in Melbourne, come out to home. I'll give you a tour of the workshop and the gallery. You can go for a walk on the Sculptor trail, have your lunch out here. You can have a swim, etc. And of course, he said, oh, no, swimming won't be happening. Those kids are used to living in a
apartment buildings,
really busy city.
Yeah.
They're not exactly water safe.
Yeah.
But these guys came out here. There was 28 students, and they unfurled this banner that they had.
Yeah, they do that in China.
Cultural art.
Yeah, they do that in China too.
Cultural art.
Everything has a banner and a photo. You got to have a banner and a photo.
Yeah. And as I chatted to these guys, it was pretty funny because we ended up with this massive. I'm on a dirt road, thin dirt road. This massive coach. 28 kids. I thought they'd be in a smaller bus.
Oh, right.
This huge coach that was stuck on the street.
Yeah.
Neighbours had to go. It's lucky there's 2 different ends to the street so the neighbours could get out.
Oh.
But I spent this time with these kids, and I'd said to the teacher, so what are the things that you're doing arts-wise while you're in Melbourne? And he said, we're going to NGV. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Good idea.
And to you.
Wow.
Said, right, what do you mean? He goes, oh, well, this is the main thing that we're doing while we're here. So we're here for like 6 or 7 days, really quick trip.
Yeah, yeah.
And I couldn't believe all these kids and their teacher were here, and I was one of the main attractions in the Bend of Islands in this.
Yeah. Wow.
An hour from the centre of town.
Yeah, that's a really big
hilarious.
compliment. That's a big compliment, though. You know, that's.
It was.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like the fact that this guy even found me, and he was probably looking for arts things in Melbourne because he had relatives here, so he figured he could get a school trip.
Yeah.
Get the kids over.
Yeah, but
catch
still,
up with his family.
Yeah, there's lots of art things to do in Melbourne. That's for sure. Melbourne's not short on art. That's for sure. And they chose you, and that's that's a really, really good thing. And it makes you. So, are you going to now add international into your title? So it'll be like Tread Sculptures International. Yeah. Well, you have international curiosity. Yeah, that's a great thing. Yeah, I like it.
But in terms of the people that we had a few different schools come out, and we've even had clubs come out here and Rotary groups and stuff. But that's all nice for them and a bit of fun. But in terms of making a living from artwork, we have families and individuals come out here on those weekends, walk the Sculptor Trail, find something that they like. I tell some stories and they buy some artwork, and
Yeah. That's really cool. Now, before the podcast started, we were having a quick chat about mental health, and I've had struggles with it, as I think a lot of people do, and a lot more perhaps fly under the radar and don't perhaps even realize that they have. What would you like to say about mental health struggle, if anything, if you'd like to?
Yeah.
It's a big topic, and it's a very difficult topic because there's, like, I think our language fails us in trying to explain some of the feelings and emotions and what actually goes on inside your head. I know myself, I have had troubles. I think even if you went to a doctor, you kind of say, I feel like this, but it doesn't quite cut it, and it doesn't really get your point across what you're feeling. And I've always felt that about what you feel like with your thoughts and your emotions and your feelings and that kind of thing. It feels like a very difficult thing to explain to other people. And I think often that compounds it. I think sometimes that compounds it for people as well. That sense of isolation, I think, and stigma, isolation and stigma that go with it as well. But anyway, I'll throw it over to you, and you can say what you like.
Well, I found myself in the situation. How old would I been? In my late 30s, 40s, where, even 30s probably, really, where I had building, domestic and commercial building company with my best mate, and that company had done well, and I enjoyed the work. I was married very happily, 4 great kids that were really healthy. and I found myself at a point where I just wasn't really functioning anymore, and I essentially wanted to kill myself. And there was nothing that was going on in my life that would have made me think that.
Okay.
And look, basically, I went along to the doctor when I couldn't function anymore. Doctor said, well, you're suffering from depression. I'm going to prescribe these drugs. 3 or 4 weeks it'll take to kick in and you'll be right. And I've walked out there going, you beauty, like I'm back in the game. You know, I put up with feeling like shit for a couple of weeks and then I'm all good. And of course, that didn't happen. Those drugs didn't work. And it essentially started a cycle of years of both Karen and I, as a family, trying to work out what was going on and why I was feeling the way I was feeling. The system we found incredibly broken. And look, we went through years of different drugs, different doctors, different levels of being okay. And being able to work. And then other times I had lots of rounds of electroconvulsive therapy and hospital admission.
Wow.
Some psychotic episodes, like the whole gamut, really.
That's pretty intense.
And it was, it was intense and it was destructive. And I guess over that time I learned a lot about myself, but
yeah, of course.
Looking back at it, I think the only reason I made it through, to be honest, was because I had such a supportive family, especially my wife, who's incredible, and kids who were young at the time, but were certainly a part of it. It got to a point basically where we hadn't, any of the normal things hadn't really worked for us. And got to a point where Karen and I were away one Easter, and we both read a book called Back from the Brink, and it was stories of 11 different Victorians, different battles with mental illness, whether that was all different sorts of mental illness, basically. And the interesting thing at the end of this book was that none of them would have said they'd been cured from their mental illness, but they'd all learned ways of managing it and dealing with it. And Karen and I realised that we'd been aggressively trying to fix my mental health and get me back to who I was before. And we asked the question, what would it be like? What would life be like if we accepted it and learned to manage it? That completely changed things for us. And at that time, we decided we'd sell the building business, and we'd use take medication to a level where we thought it was keeping me at the rock bottom, keeping me from killing myself, essentially. And that we would learn other ways to to manage life.
Yeah.
And at that time, there was a cognitive behavioural therapy was really popular, and
It is
that's
popular.
still
Yeah.
it's still a go-to for mental health professionals.
Yeah.
But cognitive behaviour therapy looks at digging down into what's going on with your thinking and working out how to reshape that and change it. And my experience was that the more that I pushed into that, the more aggressive the illness got.
Yeah. Now I'm just going to jump in there. That's very fascinating because, and I understand what you're saying, and it feels like with mental illness that the deeper, like as you say, the deeper you go into it, it's the more time you're spending with it, you know. And I've found personally that spending less time with it is better. You know, the more time you spend with it, the more things start to become familiar, and you know it, and you can kind of try and get a handle on it or some understanding of it. But also, you're spending your time with it rather than spending your time away from it, which is what essentially you're trying to do by doing that. Yeah,
and it fights back harder.
Yeah, and I think that's because of the time you're spending with it. I think.
Yeah.
If you know, personally.
And look, in amongst that, I learned of a therapy called acceptance commitment therapy, or ACT is the way they would say it.
Yeah, right.
And what acceptance commitment therapy does is it acknowledges an unhelpful thought or feeling.
Yeah.
And then creates space around it, but it doesn't allow it to have the control of what's going on for you in your mind.
Yeah. Okay.
And that for me was one turning point in reframing the way that I manage my mental health. And look, I look now, Keith, at the way I'm living, the work that I do now, working as an artist, which I love, the work that I've done, I ended up working within mental health for a while.
Yeah.
I've been running a mental health support group for 12 years now, that just gives people a secure place to be able to talk about what's going on in their lives. And if I look at the journey, I wouldn't want anyone to have to go through what I was going through then. I don't want people to have to deal with mental illness. But also, if I had the choice of being the person that I was before I struggled with mental illness, I was driven. Look, all I would say is I'd much rather be who I am now, and who I am now has been developed by the struggles that I've had with mental illness that I wouldn't choose to have.
Yeah.
But
with mental illness, and I think with life, trials kind of somehow define us and teach us a lot about ourselves, you know, like the real struggles, not the bullshit, you know, but you know, the kind of can't find the rent struggles and the you know, real things that, you know, kind of form you and form who you are, and also make you stronger. You know, you feel that I got through that. I often refer back to things in my life where I made it through that. So, you know, if it happens again, I know I can get through it. I know I can make it through it. You know, and I think those struggles, those struggles, like what you were saying. You know, sort of the cliche is trial by fire, but, you know, and what doesn't kill you and all that sort of shit. You know, I don't really go with that, but I do go with I'm glad of my struggles, even though I've hated them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad
Yeah.
of them.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I find in the work that I've done with mental health that if I'm really honest about my own journey and who I am, then other people are far more likely to be honest about their journey. And that means that I connect with them, and that ultimately is a genuine way to form relationships and support each other and encourage each other.
Yeah. Yeah. I think isolation is a really
Without
difficult one.
giving up.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really breaking up, man. It's a shame, really. Saying a lot of good things there. Yeah, the one thing, and just it's on topic, but it's a little bit off topic. Is I remember I had I took Champix. I don't know if you know Champix, the drug Champix. It's like
No.
yeah, right. It's a quit smoking drug, right? And it was touted for.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, right. So I took Champix for a bit, but one of the side effects was paranoia, and I got really severe paranoia taking it. And of course, I stopped taking it, but I didn't know. Like one of the things about paranoia is you don't really know you got it when you got it. You know, it's just like, you know, what and there, what, and it wasn't like, I think maybe I had it for like quite a few weeks, possibly months, like, and it just was exacerbating, getting worse and worse, and you know, it cost me a relationship, and it cost me, you know, quite a bit of things, and it wasn't until I put the two together, like, fuck, Champix, paranoia, what, yeah, I kind of had a moment, and I stopped taking it. But the weirdest thing about paranoia, which this may help you in your group or whatever, with people who have paranoia, is that your memories of it feel real. So even though I know that was paranoia, right? The way I was behaving and the shit that was going on in my head, if I remember it
doesn't take away the fear.
when I remember it, it feels like that was really what was going on, and it's so fucked up because in my brain I know without a doubt that is not what was going on, but when I remember it, I remember that as nope, that's what was going on, and I know, like, I can tell the difference, and I know that I was being paranoid, but the actual memory of it still feels like that was reality.
Isn't that like, though, Karen and I have a laugh at times about, I'll wake up in the morning and I'll have dreamt that we were having a fight and she was being really bitchy.
Yeah.
And I'll wake up in
angry.
a bad mood with her.
Yeah. And nothing's happened. Yeah, nothing.
And she'll be like, Tim, it was only a dream. I didn't really do that.
Yeah, and it's like, but it's
the same thing.
Totally felt like you did. It feels like you did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The memory of it's there.
Yeah, and it lingers. I think with dreams, it doesn't linger as long. But even today, if I think back, I feel like that was what was going on at that time, which I know wasn't what was going on at that time. But I definitely feel like that was the reality of that situation. Even though and it's such a weird thing because it's so, I don't know what the word is, maybe disparate, that you've got these two versions, and one is real, but the other one you would swear is real, and in your mind, it feels like it's the real thing. Yeah, very, very strange. Yeah. So another thing I want to ask you about is the political situation in Victoria, because I see that Dan Andrews your guy? Yeah. So I just see lots of stuff about evil Dan, like he's evil at the moment. Everyone's like, oh, Dan is evil, so evil, that guy. So what's going on? What's going on? Like I don't know anything about any Australian politics because I haven't lived in Australia for a long time now. And when I say a long time, I mean like 4 or 5 years. But you know, I haven't been invested in it. But so what's going on for any people who are interested in what's happening in Victoria at the moment? What's going on with Dan Andrews? What's the story?
Well, the interesting thing about that is, of course, you're only going to get my opinion on it, and it's very divisive. The whole stuff that's going on with it.
Okay. Maybe we can jump over that and get back to the art or the mental health.
You know, one of the things that does bother me about the way that things are going at the moment is that we started this whole COVID stuff, and that they're advertising on TV, they're advertising on the radio. We're all in this together. Australia's all in this together. And then, as these different things happen in different states, like the cruise liner coming into Sydney and them letting all these people off that then spread out all over Australia with COVID-19. And then Victoria with the hotel quarantine issue, and all these different borders within Australia being closed to, like, if you're a Victorian, you are absolutely on the nose at the moment. You're not going anywhere in Australia.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
No way.
I've seen that on Facebook and all that, and it's like the demon Victorians, you know, and like, oh fuck the Victorians, they deserve it, and all this sort of stuff, and they were stupid, and all this sort of stuff, and yet, like, well, not only are we're all on the same planet, you know, we're all going through something, you know, together. This thing, whatever it is, this COVID thing, which I just. You know, I'm not a complete conspiracy theorist, but I'm not really a conspiracy theorist, but it just doesn't feel right. Something doesn't feel right about all this. You know, when we've had outbreaks of different things before, like SARS and Ebola, and these things have happened, but the world didn't stop, and this time it did, and it was and is COVID that much more dangerous? I mean, it doesn't seem, you know, when you're seeing stuff now about fudged numbers and things coming out of the US and fudged numbers from England, and like, you know, in the US they were actually, you know, they had a monetary attachment to labeling something a COVID death because they would get funding from the government for saying it. So like if someone... You look at the fact that we've just had the anniversary, or the US have had the anniversary of September 11. Yeah.
Which is a massive thing that the whole world knows about every year. And 3,000 people died.
Yeah.
And you've got over 200,000 or close to 200,000 people in the US dying of COVID. And the whole country is just so conflicted and opposed to each other.
You're divided.
It's all going to... I mean, they're just destroying themselves.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing. I have a friend an American friend, a good friend of mine, Dave in Thailand. Shout out to Dave, and let's go riding sometime, me and Dave. When I get back, we're definitely going riding. But he was saying, you know, and he posted online the exact same thing, that he, as an American, is just confused why America is so divided when they've lost, as you say, 200,000 people, and yet, you know, in light of September 11, and he was there at September 11. He's a New Yorker. And you know, he hung around and did some stuff in the city there. It'd be better if he spoke about that. So, but the thing that he, you know, concerns him is that these numbers, you know, 200,000, and it's like we don't care so much about the numbers. We care more about, am I allowed out of my house? You know, it's like you're talking about 200,000 people dead. and
Yeah.
yet it seems to be Black Lives Matter is or something else is more important than acknowledging the total massive loss that you've had and not uniting on a massive loss. But yeah, as you say, with like 3,000 people, united a whole country and mobilized them into war, which America seems to like to do anyway. You know, that's neither here or there, but
They like that.
They totally do that. But yeah, the numbers are, you know, and just how we're not connected to it. It's like somehow we're not connected to those numbers. It's like the Americans.
It's not relevant.
Yeah, it's almost like it's not relevant, and it becomes an issue of civil liberties or you know, things like that. And the death side of it, it's like apparently or what it seems like is that if it's a pandemic, then you just get death, and that, you know, that's what happens. And what?
Yeah.
And what? I mean, what?
But then
go.
you've got these crazy things like the Alpine Valley up where Mum and Auntie, my stepdad, live in Victoria, so 3.5 hours away. Right, or Punker, Milford, through there. The Alpine Valley is a big area and with a lot of towns involved. They have not got one active COVID case up there, not one, and they're on stage 3 lockdowns.
Yeah, and again, this kind of feeds my what the fuck's going on thing, you know, like, I mean, I guess I can see why they might want to lock them down so that no one goes out and brings it back, maybe, but I struggle with this whole thing with COVID and all those sorts of things that it's seems to be.
I lost you there for a bit.
I saw you were gone. It seems to be that it feels like there's more to this than just a pandemic. Even, you know, I'm sure a lot of people feel that way. I don't think I feel like that on my own, and I don't think everyone's a conspiracy theorist, but I do feel like something else is going on. You know, something just doesn't, you know, a lot of it doesn't make sense, and that's true, but it's just sort of that underlying feeling that, I don't know, you know, I can't put my finger on it, but it feels like precedences are being put in place, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
locking down people.
Don't you feel like I look at this pandemic in relation to what's going on in the world at the moment anyway, and the massive corporations, globalization, the amount of money that is going around, that a tiny percentage of the world has control over, and the way social media plays a part, all of these different things. And I look at what we're doing to the environment and just go, man, you fuck around enough with the world and the universe is going to sort it out itself.
Yeah. It's like you fuck around with the world so much, and the world's going to fuck back. And it's going to.
Yeah, and like, how much better is our environment now?
Oh yeah.
Because, I mean, we're destroying the place. We're literally destroying the place.
Yeah, I have to say, like in China, so one of the things I noticed when I came back, because it was quiet, it was like a ghost town, you know. Me and my friend, when we were walking down the street, we were literally the only people on the street, and it's 700,000 people in this town. And but I looked up and I just saw the stars. And man, China's very, very, very smoggy. It's a smoggy place. Yeah. And you know, people wear masks in China sometimes just for protecting themselves from the air. So yeah, it's that. But like you say, the COVID thing has stopped a lot of that now. Of course, China's back to normal, but it did stop a lot of that around the world. And I think the world maybe took in a deep breath and went, thank you.
And I'm sure it's very cliche, and my 24-year-old son would give me a hard time for even saying it. But I couldn't help thinking when all of this was happening that the Earth was taking a breath and humanity was losing. I had a better way of putting it, but humanity's finding it hard to breathe because of COVID.
Yeah.
And yet the Earth is taking this giant relief.
Yeah. I get what you're saying. Like I mean, the irony is that the COVID is about breathing. It's about breathing, and the Earth is getting to breathe because of it. And it's a pretty interesting time in the sense that I think people are when people get kind of forced into isolation, they find really creative ways of communicating with each other.
Yeah.
And I think part of that I think would be subconsciously, definitely for me, because it definitely wasn't a subconscious thing. It definitely wasn't a conscious thing, but the podcast was like, I'm going to do that, and yet it again, ironically, it's a thing about communicating in an environment where communication is, I can't go to Australia, I can't go to Thailand, I can't go anywhere. I can go to work, that's it, and I can go, probably go lots of places in China, but I wonder if that's sort of how that came about as well. Is that just that at the moment there just seems to be, people are communicating great. That's a good thing,
People are chasing each other up. They're making sure they're okay.
Yeah, and it's like maybe somehow we've started to get back to what actually matters, and that is like being part of a community. And people are like, they've had their branches clipped, and now they're growing out again, and they're finding that community or their roots. I guess that's a better analogy is like that their roots are growing out and finding the roots of other trees and the people that they grew up around and all that sort of thing, and getting back to who they are essentially, not take work's taken away and focus on all that sort of shit, and the rat race is kind of shut down. And it's given us, I think it's given us a big opportunity to connect again with each other as well.
It has, but then that's one of the things that we're finding difficult in Melbourne now. Is, we're in the bush. When you're out here, you feel like you're in the middle of nowhere, yet we're an hour from the CBD sort of thing. We've got, there's probably 10 houses on Lower Katani where I live, and the river's at our back door. And we've got great neighbours and friends that, for instance, very good friends with 4 doors that way, which is about 700 metres because some acreage. And these great friends, their son works with me a couple of days a week in the workshop. And every week we would sit on their back porch overlooking the river for drinks, tea, catch up with different people in the street. And what COVID's got, the effect that's had on us now, is at the moment, their son can't work here for me in the bush on a dirt road, 4 doors up, and I can't have dinner with my mate on his back porch looking over the river.
Do you reckon you could get away with it? I mean,
Well, you could. The problem is they've worked on all of creating this fear around neighbourhoods and neighbours telling on each other if there's a group of people that appear to be having a dinner party or a party or sitting around a bonfire.
It's so Orwellian. It's so Orwellian. The just
Yeah.
dob in your mates, and
Yeah.
they're not doing the right thing, and wow, it's I mean, this is the kind of stuff that growing up, you and I probably thought about communist Russia. We thought this is the shit that happens in communist Russia. They have to dob on each other, and the Politburo or whoever they are come and get you and take you away in the night because you were seen out of your house and all that sort of thing. And now it's kind of reality in Australia, of all places.
And there's 3 different guys that I have to do a bit for me here. Great group of young blokes that are doing different uni degrees and stuff, and they spend different time in the workshop each week. All of those 3 are within 10 to 15 minutes of here on dirt roads.
Yeah.
And I am not allowed to have them working here, and the economy is fucked.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point that you make there. And I've done a lot of thinking about this because I consider myself incredibly fortunate that I've managed to be working the whole time through this.
Me too.
I got to do video school, and then I came back and then did video school, and then in lockdown, and then once it was sort of deemed okay, then I was back at school and working. But I didn't lose any pay. I didn't, I can still pay all my bills. But I think of people. I think of how easily it could have been different for me. If I wasn't doing the line of work I'm doing now, I could easily have been working somewhere that I wasn't allowed to go to work. And I'm not like the smartest guy. I haven't had the best savings plan in my life. I haven't really been good at that kind of thing. And I've pretty much had jobs where I've lived paycheck to paycheck for most of my life. And to think of being in that situation, living paycheck to paycheck, which is, I don't blame people for being in that situation. I think a lot of people in that situation because they just can't afford to be in any other situation. Yeah. That's the situation they're in. And for me, a lot of my life, that's been the situation I've been in as well. I wouldn't really have had the capacity to save very much. I might have been able to save, but I wouldn't have been able to save very much. And I definitely wouldn't have been able to save enough to live for 3 months, or 5 months or 6 months or something like that. And I just wonder what's going on? How is that being dealt with?
Well, honestly, I can't believe that I thought when COVID hit that I'd be, I'm very fortunate that Karen's got a good job, but I figured I'd be stuffed because art's a luxury.
Yeah.
As it's turned out, people all over Australia are locked down at home and spending all this time on their homes and their gardens, and they want my work, which is
lucky,
fantastic.
It's
Last week on Thursday, I had work go out to Altona in Victoria, Wodonga, Sale, and Newcastle in New South Wales.
Yeah, right. It's amazing.
People are wanting this work, but 2 doors down from me is a guy who owns 6 pubs in Melbourne.
Yeah, right.
Hundreds of employees.
Yeah.
And there's not even a clear indication of when he can get his pubs back to work. There's so many businesses that are just can't do it.
Yeah, it's these are the people that are really hurt. No, again, this is the thing that concerns me is that there doesn't seem to be any talk of these people, like in the media or anything like that of these people. And the economy. Of course, they're not going to talk about the economy because they don't want to affect trade and to affect the dollar, right? The value of the dollar. But because an admission that the economy is going under, then that's, going to affect what the dollar's worth and trade. Of course, the big word trade, which usually means getting money from China. And I'm really, really disappointed that there's not more talk about helping people at the moment, because there must be thousands upon thousands of people who are doing it really tough.
Yeah.
Really, really tough.
There is.
Yeah.
There is.
Yeah.
And there's been really some really good funding, some really good programs, but none of it gets even close to keeping some of those businesses in business. Like, it's going to be a massive, massive shift in what businesses exist after this is over and who owns them.
Yeah, I found it really, really outrageous that all the big money corporations, the really big ones, get bailed out. They're just like, here's a shit ton of money for you, but the dude on the street, who's doing it tough and no fault of his own a lot of the time, is doing it real hard. And people say, oh, they should have this and they should have that. No one saw this coming, and I think anyone who says that is very, very small-minded. But these, as a country and governments are pretty much there to take care of the people, right? I mean, that's why we have them. We have them to govern, right? And not just make decisions, but also to look after people, or to put things in place so that the people who voted them in get taken care of. And I see this as a massive, massive failure of giving these, things like Qantas, who gives a shit? Someone else will buy airplanes and make planes and fly, It's not like it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
It happened before, it'll happen again. I mean, people are going out of business, but why is it that the big businesses don't get to go out of business?
Yeah.
I find that it's absolutely outrageous. And the amount of money that that gets thrown around, we're talking big, big numbers. And yeah, really, it's a blight. It's a bad view of our culture, I think, where that becomes the priority.
The problem, I think, Keith, is that so many of these big businesses are booming. The Coles, the Woolworths, the Bunnings, the Westfarm, like big chains are absolutely booming. And then the small owner-run places, and even in this stage 4 lockdown, those big corporations are still all operating click and collect, contactless deliveries, all that sort of stuff. And there is a squillion small businesses who just haven't got home.
Yeah, and also there's kind of like a bit of bullshit going on there, right? So the guys up the road from you that can't come and work at your place, right? But the delivery driver, he can go drive his truck, and he will inevitably have contact with people. It's impossible that
of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
And, so...
Uber drivers can pick up takeaway food and go delivering it to different houses perfectly legally.
Yeah.
And yet your local coffee shop is fucked.
Yeah. It really blows the mind. And also, what I really hope is that people, that are of the age where they can do so, remember this shit, what's happened, and and I'm sure that a lot of them will, because a lot of them will be directly affected. Like you say, people who are uni students, and they're, the way that they're maybe funding their university, or the way that they're living while they're at university is, working in a pub, or people do those kind of jobs. I remember when I was at university, I had like a weekend job, that kind of thing, and now that's not happening. Those things aren't happening, and I really hope that somehow we remember this, and those people and other people realize that this needs to change. That I think COVID has provided us with a great opportunity as well to really reassess what's important and what should be valued, and to head towards that, to make paths towards that, and not just keep going the status quo, keep going with how things are after COVID. And having said that, right, so if China's a model, unfortunately China is business as usual. Nothing's changed, and nothing. Obviously, China's not going to change because the government says what changes. There's no way for the people to change things here. But I really hope in the rest of the world, people get off all the crazy shit that they're on with at the moment, and start to realize that there are bigger issues, and those issues are that we need to have systems in place where we take care of our people. Even though that sounds communist, it sounds like now I'm a big lefty.
Yeah, but something crazy, Pete, is you and I can have this conversation. I could talk to you tonight about getting out on the street, right, at a certain time this week in Melbourne and protesting, representing the small business owner or whatever, and we're going to get a group of people together, and I could have the cops. You put that out there, that podcast. I could have the cops at my door, like this week.
Man, I saw that.
Pregnant lady in Ballarat.
Yeah, I saw it.
Who wanted to organise something. Yeah, ends up dragged off by the coppers.
Now, really, again, I kind of have the view that there's some kind of, like, as Joe Rogan puts it, some kind of fuckery going on with that, because I kind of just don't see a law that is that if you say something on social media, you get locked up, like, even if it's like, fuck the police, like, inciting. Yeah. Well, I mean, when I got expelled from school, I got expelled from a well-known school in Melbourne for conspiracy. So one of these same bullshit things, these things are in my life as well, for conspiracy to downgrade the name of the school. That was their reason that I got expelled. That was their reason from the school. And you know what that means? That I was smoking in school uniform. That's conspiracy. That was my conspiracy. Conspiring.
No.
Conspiring. Doesn't that normally involve other people and, like, having something going on?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that's a bit of out of my life story, but this idea of conspiracy and conspiring and all this kind of shit, like, really, precedences are being set, and they're disturbing. They're really disturbing. And good precedences could be being set where, instead of bailing out the big businesses, we're going to take all that money and we're going to help stabilize the economy with the small businesses so that everyone's got money to spend and we could do stuff. And, the guy from up the road, he can come down because, but let's say you both get tested, both negative, right? So he doesn't go out except to work with you. Sweet, do it. And I can't see that this is not, like, just something that just is logical, completely logical, and is completely doable. I don't understand, and that's why I keep saying something else is going on. That's why I always, in my head, I keep thinking something else must be going on, because that is, like, just the simplest, most logical and easy thing. It seems to be bullshit that can't go on. It's just logical. It's logical that could happen.
But I reckon where the problem is, and you're dealing with a lot of people in Melbourne, of course, but there's no allowance for common sense. So I think ideally living in this suburb, which is very much a individual sort of place, to have a bubble that supported each other and could catch up with each other and do the social stuff they need to do and provide each other with food and get that connection would make perfect sense out here. But there's not a flexibility for that. And then if you look at our family has largely functioned relatively normally because Georgia and Charlotte were 21-year or 20-year-old twins.
Yeah.
They both work in disability support, which is an essential service.
Yeah.
So they're working with clients all over Melbourne. Charlotte, in between shifts last week, went into a McDonald's store, or went through a drive-through McDonald's and pulled up in her car. And because of the number plate recognition, coppers came into the car park.
Oh, jeez.
Saw that she lived in the Band of Islands. Go, where the hell is the Band of Islands? Don't even know where that is.
Yeah, yeah.
Pulled her over. Mate, where's the Band of Islands? What are you doing here? Doesn't that all just sound a bit crazy?
Well, the thing is that it doesn't sound crazy. It sounds planned. It sounds like, that sounds like a government that wants some kind of ultimate control over the people, putting something in place where now they have that. And now they have a precedent to do that. I mean, it would be lovely if it was just plainly crazy. That would be nice. That would be nice if it was just stupid, but I just don't, there are levels of stupid out there. Believe me, you see them, but it doesn't feel stupid. It feels planned. It feels, it's just for like the numbers and all that sort of thing and the curve and, where the curve gets to and all that. And then the things that are being done just seem to, it doesn't seem to line up. It doesn't seem to line up, China's been out of COVID for a long time, like as in lockdown. And, it's been, it's been a while. It's been a while. Like I've had a term and a break. So it's been, maybe 3 months, maybe more, maybe 4 months.
So when will you get
back to normal?
To Thailand?
Well, that's another question entirely. Getting back to Thailand, so Thailand is still closed borders, but inside Thailand is open. It's open travel. My friends go on motorcycle rides and do all kinds of fun things over there that I'm very jealous of. But getting into Thailand is really, really difficult. Really difficult. And again, China, whilst everything's happening here, I'm pretty sure they haven't opened the borders yet. They're starting to advertise jobs to foreigners living overseas again. So that's a sign that they're going to open, soon. When I say soon, maybe like next semester, so maybe that would be early next year. But yeah, those signs are in place. They're starting to advertise for that kind of work. So that means that's happening. But Thailand's the same. Thailand, you can only get in if you're family of a Thai, as in if you have a Thai wife or something like that, or if you have employment. Yeah, or you're a resident. If you're a Thai resident, that's the only way you can get in there at the moment. And really,
I need more work done on my teeth. So.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, you guys went to Phuket, right? And actually later on you can tell me about that because I want to get some work done on my teeth there, and I'd planned a ride. It was supposed to be this break because I get 6 weeks holidays or a bit more. Where I go to Thailand, ride around for weeks and weeks. And we were going to go south and we were going to go through Phuket. and down the south there. I live in Thailand. I live in the middle of Thailand in a place called Buriram, which is Buriram's where they have the Thai MotoGP. So that's my city.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, I've never been there when it's been on. I've been unfortunate all the times, but they have a lot of motorcycle racing there. That like there's a lot there to go and see. And in the car park every Friday night of the Buriram circuit, on a Friday night they have drag racing for the guys on the 125 scooters, and it's massive, man.
Oh yeah.
There's hundreds of them. Yeah, it's so much fun.
A bit of that.
Yeah. Oh man, it's just the best. It's the best. Friday night out, just go there and then go to the bar afterwards and go back. So I live about an hour from Buriram. I live in a small village, but great night out. And it's run by the police, and they have there's no times on it. It's just like whoever goes over the line at the end first. They send them off six at a go, and sometimes there's girls dancing in the back of pickups and loud music, and it's got stands. They bring out stands, so there's stands like for you to sit in and watch the drags, and it's all teenagers pretty much, like Thai teenagers with these hotted up 125s. Some are 2-stroke, some are 4-strokes, and they race them against each other, and they usually race by category, and 6 at a time. And sometimes even every now and again a 300 goes down the track. I see some 150s go down the track. Yeah, it just fun. And it's got TV cameras and big screens and everything. It's a fun night out. It really is. When I lived in Thailand, I used to go there frequently to the Friday night out. It was just the best fun. I'd go be in my village and have a few beers, talk to my mates and that, and I go, it's the drags tonight, like we should go up, and then next thing you know, we're all on the bikes and then we're up at the drags and having a fun time.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Okay, Tim, I'll tell you what, I think this is about 2 hours we've been going now, or perhaps a little bit more. Really, really good to talk to you, and thanks for being on the show. And for people listening, Tread Sculptures is Tim's business. I'll put a link in the description for it. And check out some of his artwork. And as you can hear from the podcast, internationally renowned. People have come from Singapore to see his art. So, people don't just travel to go and see art. If it's shit, it's good. It's good stuff. So you should really go and check it out. And again, Tim, thanks for being on the show. Really, really good to see you.
Yeah. Okay, mate.
Okay. Take it easy.
See
ya.